So let's just start with, what's a little bit of your backstory?
How far back you want to go?
Where are you from?
Was born and raised back east.
Okay.
So yeah, back in Boston. So kind of grew up back there, East Coast. Um, Typical, in my opinion, upbringing at the time. So what I mean by that is we walked to school. You grabbed icicles in the wintertime off of the neighbors' houses. Nobody had fences, so you kind of walked through everybody's backyard to get to school. Kind of a magical upbringing. Um, and you don't know what you don't know. And so at the time, my mom, we grew up in a very religious household, very spiritual household from my mom's perspective. And my dad was a notorious criminal, notorious gang member.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So the upbringing, in my opinion, you don't know what you don't know. You kind of look back at it now and you're able to dissect certain parts of it and use some of it to your advantage or to your benefit for the rest of your life. And so that's really what we did. But growing up back east was a blast. I'm still loyal to anything that's related to Boston, including the food and the sports teams.
That's awesome. So did you lean one way more than the other growing up? Were you like more like your dad or more like your mom?
Such a good question. I I can tell you to this day, my father's downfall was heroin, and um, he's the reason to this day why I haven't done drugs. And so I think oftentimes you're able to use some of those points in your life as a change in perspective to say, I'm going to use this not as a crutch, but to be able to impact myself in the world. And so because of that, yeah, I leaned towards my mom. I felt that a lot of her ideology, a lot of her religion, spirituality, good intentions, hard work was really where I wanted to land. And so it was difficult, like any household, regardless of whether your dad is or is not a criminal, trying to figure out mom and dad. They have two distinct roles, in my opinion. Um, and so my parents did, now that I'm old, I'm able to say my parents did the best job at the time with the information that they had.
Were you the oldest child?
No, I have an older sister and two younger sisters.
I always feel bad for my oldest kid because she's got to learn just like I'm learning. Like
Yeah.
I'm parenting, I'm learning.
You've never had a fill in the blank 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, right?
Right.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's funny that you mentioned that because now I've been having this conversation this week with a family member who's in town. It when you look back on your upbringing, it's much easier to look at it and say my parents gave the best opportunity for us at the time. And sometimes your mom didn't have a role model or your dad didn't have a role model or 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 maybe they did and they failed. And that's okay. There's a place for that and it doesn't have any impact on you. It doesn't mean that you're a failure. It doesn't mean that your upbringing was a failure. So I think that's something that a lot of people, including myself, have to unpack as a child.
Yeah, trying to break that generational curse is huge. You can kind of see the patterns between your dad, your grandpa, and then you can just kind of see if you don't make a change, that's what your kids are going to look at too.
100%. And then you get to pour into them. That's some of the fun stuff. We have one boy, we have one son, and so it's fun for me to be able to go, okay, my dad spent time with me when we were young, but it was, collecting money or doing things that we shouldn't be doing as an 8-year-old. And so having the opportunity now to kind of reset and to be able to walk through life with Brock and say, here's some of the pillars of life. We listen to Hormozy on the way to school. We listen to Jordan Peterson on the way back from school, just to pour into him, even if it's a 10-minute conversation, even if it's a 4-minute snippet on a podcast while we're in the car. I think it's just good for these kids to pour into them. And that's something that our parents didn't have. They didn't have this like open opportunity. I mean, you can open up YouTube and learn anything. And so I don't think that they had that open opportunity. And so I'm using that to the best of my ability because I don't have that mentorship from a father from here's how you raise a 13-year-old.
Yeah, it's huge. I think, like you said, you are your environment, right? So whatever you grow up around is all you know. And I think as I've seen in the prison system too, is like I see families just like, oh, my dad's over here, my brother's over here, and that's all they've known. So I think just seeing that in my own household of like, if this is what I want my kids to be like older, I need to start changing myself right now
It's true.
because whatever I'm not willing to take on right now is just something that they're going to have to take on later, and that's not fair to them.
Going back to that,